So there is a lot of uproar at the moment because it seems that a brigade within the army that was formulated allegedly to spy on people who are from outside the country, or people coming into the country from outside the country that pose a threat to us. And it seems that their job was, or their remit, they're working well outside of their remit at the moment. And over the past few years, since the COVID thing came about, anybody who was a dissenter to COVID has been monitored, if they're big enough. Peter Hitchens being one of them, and there's been others. If you're in, if you were a big face, if you like, or if you're a reporter, or if you're someone like that, or an outspoken doctor, these people were tracking what you were doing. Basically, you've been spied on. This shocks people, but this isn't a new thing. The way they do it, the methods they use now, slightly more easy for them, really. We all carry around a device that can listen to us 24 hours a day. So it's not as if they had to, like they did in the old days, place a bug in your place or tap your phones or whatever. It's a lot easier now. You do it for them. But it seems that it wasn't just one or two people. There was tens of thousands of people within the UK that they were spying on who were dissenting or who had dissenting opinions about COVID, about anything to do with it. But don't forget that, go back, we spied on people during the 50s who we thought had communist tendencies. We've spied on people in Northern Ireland on either side of the divide, and others in between. We've spied on people from other nationalities that lived in this country that could have been tied to, I don't know, Gaddafi back in the day, Hezbollah back in the day, that might have had Iraqi connections. We spied on all sorts of people. You wouldn't believe the amount of people. And it isn't just the government that gets to spy on people. I mean, you look at Piers Morgan when he tapped that dead girl's phone. You know, the other people than the government can spy on you, by the way. But we all act a bit shocked and horrid and a bit annoyed. But there it is. We live in a lot closer to a communist society now than we ever have. But we've always lived in a country that will make sure that anybody who could pose a threat to the ruling class, to the people that will have no intention of ever letting anything like a coup d'etat happen, or a transfer of power from the incredibly wealthy to the less wealthy, perhaps. So what they do is anything that's ever political threat, or anybody could shift opinion, that has the ability to shift opinion from the narrative over to the truth, perhaps. Because as long as I've been alive, that's 47 years. When I started becoming aware of things, which would have been about little bits, about 8, 9, 10, and I moved on like that. When I got to 15, I was asking questions, and 21, I got to the point at 21, this doesn't make sense, but it's not meant to. It's all too technical. You're not meant to understand it. You're one of the poor people. You're not meant to get this. And it's only in later life I went, actually, bollocks, I'm not having that. But this is it. If you decided that you stood up and you started saying things that went against, say, for instance, we'll go back, that went against the first Iraq war, which many did, by the way, and the second Iraq war, or if you were one of these people that came out and talked about the poll tax, if you were one of those that were involved in the miners' strike, you know, if you were a leader of a union you were spied on, okay, and people are a bit shocked by this, but it is what it is. Let me think. If you were part of, say, for instance, Greenpeace, you were spied on. If you were part of anything that could rock the boat for the rich, the very rich, all right, so if you were one of these that were, say, for instance, some of you may realise that Greenpeace were making quite a lot of a deal about pollution and whaling and all sorts of other things that were going on. And it turns out that they blew their boat up. But these are people all around the world. It's not just Great Britain, but we'll come back to Great Britain. I'm trying to think what other things they would have spied on in the past. Yeah, just anything that was big. Anything that was quite big that stood out. So the likes of the people like Tommy Robinson would have there'll be a huge file on him, right? And he'll be spied on. I would imagine Peter Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens would have been, they would have had a data file on them. I mean, use America, for instance. There was a guy there who ran the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and he had files on just about everybody. But that's because we know about it. But if you think that our government, GCHQ and other intelligence, MI5 was within the country, MI6 is outside of the country, if you think that these people don't have huge files on loads of people, and people you probably wouldn't even expect. I mean, take the likes of Katie Hopkins, right? I would imagine there's a file on her. Who else could we go with? When you start getting up to a certain size, they'll get a file on you. They'll see what of a threat you can be. How much can you actually sway public opinion? And they'll get all sorts of information on you about your past and whatever that you might not want to come out. And they'll keep hold of that until such a time that they need to approach you and say, listen, old boy. That does happen. So, yeah, spying has always been a thing. I mean, you can go back to any group of people in the last sort of 100 odd years, and any country, they've done this, but it's the variation of how much they do it and how obvious they are about it. But things are going to get worse, you know, and we spy on ourselves with our devices that we've got here. I mean, while I'm recording this video, this is possible. This can transmit while I'm not aware stuff that you don't want it to transmit. A lot of these things that you say yes to, when you're saying yes to them, you look through the details, but it actually gives them the ability to download the stuff off your phone. You've given them permission to do this. You give the powers that be that you don't want so much more permission than you'd imagine. So, yeah, so when people say they're horrid and shocked by it, I'm like, you didn't know this? But there you go. Anyway, bit of a ramble. Right, let's go for a bit more of a drive. I'll see you in a bit.